Let me try to explain what is a pretty bizarre budget. It looks more like a state government budget, doesn't it? You know, all politics. State budgets are just all about politics because they don't really have to worry about running an economy. They just allocate money to their political priorities. And that's what Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers have done here. They're supposed to have a clear idea about how to shape the national economy, how to deal with inflation and interest rates and employment and wages growth and economic output. But this Labor government doesn't really focus on that. They just focus on their ideological and political priorities. At a time the Reserve Bank is trying to constrain spending to get inflation lower and hopefully pull down interest rates, Albanese, Chalmers and Labor are spending at historically high levels. They're throwing money around wildly, more than $40 billion of extra spending over the next 2 years. Spending going up in real terms by 4.6%. That's 4.6% above inflation. Matt Canavan summed it all up on social media. Yeah, they can't help themselves, can they? That's pretty much it. This spending is reckless, it's irresponsible, it's inflationary, and it's designed to buy votes for an election likely before the end of the year, maybe early next year, before everything goes pear-shaped. The big trick of this budget, the attempted con, is a huge gamble. Labor is hoping that the $300 per household power rebate, money paid directly to your electricity provider to keep your bill lower, will trigger an artificial reduction in inflation, push inflation down with taxpayers' money. And they think that that might trick the Reserve Bank into lowering rates. Now, surely this is unlikely because the bank knows that this doesn't do anything about the underlying cause of high electricity prices, and it knows that when the rebate cuts out, then that cost is going to go straight back onto consumers and straight back into inflation. And besides, in the meantime, most households will find something else to spend their $300 on because they have to, because times are tough. This gets to the trickiness, the petty politicking of this budget. Instead of doing the hard work of fixing our energy system, of getting electricity prices down like they promised to do, Labor are just handing over more taxpayers' money to the energy companies to help pay for the exorbitant prices that they've delivered. It's throwing good money after bad. And while most people, of course, will appreciate any relief, they're still worse off than they were before Labor promised to cut power prices, and they know the rebates will run out and power prices will hit them in the neck again. So this is tricky, it's political, it's economically unsustainable, and it's lazy because they're not fixing the electricity mess. In fact, they continue to make it worse by pursuing renewable energy like zealots. Albanese is like Greta Thunberg in a business suit. This $3.5 billion scheme is the price of Chris Bowen's incompetence. The Climate and Energy Minister has failed so spectacularly in delivering affordable and reliable power that they're having to fork out $300 for every household in the country, hoping people will then forgive them for their abject energy failure. And bizarrely, because they're so desperate to get this out quickly to get ready for an election, this so-called Labor budget for working families is actually going to dole out these tax dollars to millionaires, billionaires, and to people with a dozen households.
So let me spell it out for you. Gina is Gina Reinhart. Does she need help with the power bill?
Well, Gina Reinhart is close to some people in politics, of course, in this building. As you know, Carl, I haven't met Gina, but what we have done is make sure that every single Australian gets support.
But Gina doesn't need support, PM. The reality is that there are a bunch of Australians who just don't need the $300.
This is the most effective way to deliver support across the board. Gina, if she pays income tax, will also get a tax cut. as will every Australian. Every single one of your viewers will get a tax cut on July 1.
Yeah, the Prime Minister himself will benefit from the $300 energy rebate. So will, Kate Blanchett, the Atlassian billionaires. Everyone gets this paid for by the tax dollars that we hand over. Indeed, the Treasurer, he'll get some too.
It just doesn't make any sense to me that you'd sling wealthier Australians $300 when they just don't need it, Treasurer.
Well, they're not the focus here, Carl.
I know, but why spend it if they're not the focus?
Yeah.
Because once you go beyond providing this energy relief to people on pensions and payments, which are a big priority for us, once you go beyond that, the retailers don't have the systems to slice and dice by income. They don't have the information on people's incomes, and so we'd have to design and create a whole new system which would take longer and take money and take a lot of effort. And so what we're doing instead is we're providing this energy bill relief to every household.
It'll take a lot of effort, so they just waste your tax dollars. It's just bizarre. In Parliament, the opposition zeroed in on one Labor millionaire, the member for Parramatta, Andrew Charlton, formerly an advisor to Kevin Rudd. He moved from his $20 million Bellevue Hill mansion to Parramatta in the lead up to the election.
My question is to the Prime Minister and concerns the energy rebate announced in the budget. If we take a typical Australian, let's call him Andrew, who recently had to relocate from Bellevue Hill to Parramatta for work reasons and happens to own 5 houses, including a newly acquired $12 million beach house at Palm Beach, will he be eligible to receive the rebate on all 5 houses?
Now that we have an energy price relief plan that goes to all Australians, they're going to vote against that as well. They're now against that.
Yeah, the Prime Minister didn't answer the question. The real answer to that question is yes, he gets the rebate 5 times over, quite possibly. Now, this just shows how far Labor has shifted over the years. Once proudly focused on working people and mainstream values, now Labor is so obsessed with green virtue signalling and United Nations emissions goals that it's made electricity unaffordable for working families. And to smooth this over at an election, it's prepared to take the pay-as-you-earn taxes of factory workers, teachers and nurses and hand some of that over to millionaires for power bill relief. It's absurd.
We're not going to give billions of dollars to billionaires during a housing emergency. We also need to make sure that we can address Labor's homegrown inflation problem. It's fuelled by giving billionaires additional billions of dollars, so that would be the first savings. Clive Palmer, he gets $1,000 from Stephen Miles and he gets $300 from Anthony Albanese. Is that the best way to spend money?
This completes the circle on Labor's national energy self-harm. It's not a virtuous circle, it's a vicious circle, and it goes something like this. They use billions of dollars of your tax dollars to subsidise renewable energy because they want to force coal-fired power out. This pushes up the cost of power. So they double down and push billions of dollars more into more renewable schemes and battery schemes and transmission schemes. And these all push up power bills even higher. And all the while, they tell us this.
The market is speaking, and the market tells us that the cheapest form of new energy is renewables.
Yeah, and despite this fantasy, this lie about cheap energy, they then realise that the grid has become unreliable. We're running short of power. So they need coal-fired power stations to stick around. So governments subsidise the coal generators to stop them being put out of business by the renewable subsidies that are actually designed to force coal out. And then yesterday in the budget, after all these subsidies and subsidies to counter subsidies, the government is going to subsidise every power bill for every household in the country for 1 year, an election year. Who knows what new madness will unfold after that? But surely it couldn't get worse. How could energy policy get any worse than this?